Hey, all. Welcome to this live stream episode of the Smarter Business Podcast. And this episode or this podcast, we talk to video professionals who are finding interesting ways to grow and operate their businesses utilizing the medium. And today we are kicking off Video Strategy Month on the VidWheel Creator Network, and we're doing that with Ryan Sullivan. Before we get into it, if you find this info engaging or useful, go ahead and hit all of those engagement buttons on whatever platform you happen to be on. Subscribe, share, review. You know what those buttons are. So here we have Ryan Sullivan. Ryan, it's great to have you.
Neil, great to be back. Great to collaborate with you once again. Always love to do the collaborations and makes things a little bit more fun. I feel like we're all a little bit siloed in our LinkedIn world. So to come together and speak with you, and then also all the fine people listening and watching too, and get into some video. This is what I live for, so to say. So.
Nice. Yeah. And Ryan's referring to, he spoke with the VCN. What month was that, Ryan? I'm trying to remember.
That's tough, Neil. That's the hardest question I'll have today. I don't know, 5 months ago?
Yeah, it was earlier in the year. Ryan came out to one of our Zoom meetups, which if anybody's interested in attending those, we twice monthly with the VCN will bring in an industry expert. They present on their topic of expertise. There's some networking, there's some discussion, Q&A. All of those events can be found at events.vidwheel.com. Thanks. You gave me a chance to plug that, Ryan. Perfect.
I'm pretty good at this, Neil. I'm not too bad at this.
So, Ryan, let's start off with this. Why don't we talk a little bit about what your kind of business or career journey is? How did you get to where you are today, and what are you doing today?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try not to go too far into the background because there's a lot of ups and downs in there. But I landed on podcasting through my own podcast. So I started a podcast in 2018. Really loved the medium. Really loved the interview style. Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, all those kind of the big ones. Found those podcasts in 2014, 2015. Had just been a consumer. And I just loved the medium. And I said, I was recording these things called Monday Thoughts. They were like a 1 minute. This was back when Instagram just introduced video. So you could do up to a minute. There was no reels. It was just the first introduction of video. So I was doing Monday Thoughts. It was a 1 minute video about any topic. It could be decision making or business or life or whatever it was. And a minute wasn't long enough. So I was like, let me see if I can expand on these. A podcast made sense. So I started a solo podcast. And then I met somebody in actually one of my college classes. This was in college. Met somebody in one of my classes who made 6 figures on the stock market in a year at like 21 years old. So I figured, okay, I'll make it an interview show on episode 3. So I changed it to an interview show so I can interview him. And now we're at 4 years, 102 episodes, 90 weeks in a row. So really niched down to New Jersey. So I've interviewed a ton of people from Jersey, but I've also got to interview entrepreneurs like Rob Dyrdek, other people in the podcast industry like Travis Chappell. So, it's kind of just evolved over time, but I got into this with my own show and I still do it to this day. But what we do specifically at Podcast Principles is podcast production and podcast coaching and consulting. And our number one goal is to make sure that people don't waste time, because we can sit here and this is what you do too. You kind of, we really want to help people kind of bridge the gap between, all right, I'm a subject matter expert, or this is my angle. I don't know how to podcast, but the outcome is me creating this content to help people, drive people to my business, etc. So the real, the gist of what we're trying to do specifically is to make sure that there's a system to bring people through an actual system to guarantee that their podcast gets launched, right? Because a lot of podcasts do fail later on, and we can quell a lot of that stuff in the beginning. So we've created this system to do it. And then we also do podcast production too. So that's kind of the gist.
Right on. And that fits perfectly into strategy month here. It's video strategy specifically. Video strategy month on the VidWheel Creator Network, or VCN. And the VidWheel Creator Network is a video community that helps solopreneurs and small business owners leverage video to increase their reach, become more efficient, and find their perfect fit clients. And as you said, we do the same. We do it in different ways, and we have some similar things where it's all about taking the guesswork for folks out of like how to get to that end goal, right? It's not keep researching YouTube and giving things a shot and throwing spaghetti at the wall. It's more about having a plan, having a strategy to get from A to B, right?
Yeah, and YouTube's not going to give you a strategy that's perfect for you. They're just going to give you something cookie cutter, and that's what I really stress with people. I'm like, when you have somebody there to ask, like, hey, how does this look, or should I change this, or like, what do you think about this? That is a game changer. Like, I don't buy courses because I'd rather somebody just teach me how to do it. Like, I'd rather pay a little bit more money and have somebody there with me, right? So like, that's kind of my mindset. So I mean, you probably did it something similar, but we really wanted to create something that I wanted to create something I wish that I had. And I also want to create something I probably would have been able to afford too. And that's when that's what is difficult. And when you try to do what we do, whether it's video content or it's podcasting, whether it's sales, marketing, anything in this video world that you're going to do, you're going to get 2 million search results. So how do you know who to trust? How do you know whose advice to take? How do you know what camera to buy when there's 50? Yeah, that's a massive, it's a massive piece of this. And there's the more that you can simplify it, the better, you know. But at the end of the day, it's you're really just trying to translate that into something that everybody can understand, you know.
Yeah, and I think the customization is also like you're saying it's not cookie cutter. It's something that's made custom for those individual situations. One of our group members, Sean Lewis, who's a business coach, recently posted something on that subject where I'm going to butcher exactly what he said, but it's like getting a textbook on your business or getting a guide on your business specifically versus just one that's out there and, maybe worked for somebody or, maybe not. Right. So,
yeah.
That's excellent. And I think what you do is super important. And podcasts, I think they're great for a lot of businesses out there. They can really be an impactful way to share insight and expand your audience and be able to kind of, cross promo with people like we're doing here, right? Like we are LinkedIn connections and have been able to do a couple things together. So it's excellent.
Yeah, I love this medium. Sorry, Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you got it, dude. You're the guest, man. You roll whenever you want to.
Oh no, I might go off. Yeah, man. I mean, listen, I try to look at podcasting as if I'm not obsessed with it, so I can try to see it from other people's views. I do it not for money, not for views or anything like that. I do it personally. I do it because I love it, and the outcome that I get from the guests and the audience is like, that's what I do it for. And also personally. So you start something personally, you really, for personal reasons, and you know exactly why you're doing it. It's very hard to make excuses to stop. Right. And so what I did personally, just to set this context, like I'm committed for 10 years to the medium. I'm going to podcast for one a week for 10 years. That's my goal. If I don't lose my life, I'm going to keep doing it. Like, as long as I can speak, for the most part, I should be able to. I'll figure out something else if I can't, but that's really how I look at this. Like video specifically in podcasting, I look at very long term. Like, you're going to get short term benefits that you don't expect, but the long term benefits are really what I'm in it for, and really what I'm trying to communicate to people. If you do a podcast for 2 months and it doesn't work, that's good. It's not supposed to work. Like, it's telling you what's not working now. So what people see as failure, they don't, especially in podcasting, they kind of get a little emotional about it, and they start thinking it's somebody's fault that this is happening, when in reality it's just your content's not that good, and or you're not getting it to the right people. So the best content is gonna be seen for the most part if it's marketed correctly. So and those are just a couple of the touch points on where people go wrong, and there's many different areas where they do. But I think ultimately I don't think a lot of people talk about this, and even myself, I think we talk about podcasting is great, video is great, all this. You need to make a commitment to this. It's not, A text post, you sit there in your pajamas and you're writing a cute little text post for 15 minutes and you put it out. You got to get on video. I had to make sure my hair was all right. Like I have to make sure my light was on, my light bulb didn't die. All these things, I have a backup power source now. It's like, there's a lot more that goes into it. And it is a much bigger commitment. So I think people kind of go in and they will get fired up and that excitement level will maintain for them for like the first few times. And then they realize that it's actual real work. Like the Howard Sterns and your top podcasters of the world and all these people that make it look easy. It's not easy. Like it's easy for them now because they've done it so long. But if you go in with no experience, I was just talking, for example, to a friend the other day who I consulted for him a little bit on his podcast. And he said, hey, I'm looking to potentially do a solo podcast after I hit episode 100. And I said, dude, you're not even at episode 10. Like for you to then go, okay, what does this actually look like? This looks like you sitting down and scripting. You know how long it takes to script a 6-minute podcast? So it's the execution is the difference. And that's why I love podcasting, because number one, it's a meritocracy in terms of talent and content. The best content's going to come out on top. And number two, it's a meritocracy of work. Like if you don't do the work, then you're not, or if somebody doesn't do it for you, you're not, what do you get? Nothing's going to happen. And then you're going to be the person at episode 3 going, it's not working, because you're blaming the market, which is never the market's fault. It's always your fault if it's your content. So that's kind of like a couple of the myths that I like to dispel with people of like, first of all, it's going to be a lot of work. Right. And then second of all, your content might actually not be that good,
Well, and I think you hit on too, and this isn't just for podcasts, video stuff too, right? Like the you need to make a longer commitment than 3 episodes, because like, sure, you might see a little bit of action early on there, but you're not going to hit any goals in that space. And you need to be prepared for some work on the back end, whether that is like a big part of what we do through the VCN is try to push people towards like really sustainable video production methods. And this is actually where we are right now is an example of one, right? We do live stream. And even if we weren't doing this live, we likely would have recorded it and live produced it, just because when you get to the end, you're not editing, you're not doing anything there. And we teach all our members how to do that. So the last point, which is still work, right? And something you brought up there, marketing, distribution, the other pieces. But if you get hung up way at the beginning of that process, you also are in trouble, right? So it's all about finding what works for your own business, but don't expect it to be an easy button necessarily, unless of course you want to hire Ryan's company. But then even then, I'm sure there's a lot of work that goes into it, right? For the podcasters.
Yeah. I mean, a big thing of what we do is really manage. Like, do you want to manage people? Like if you're going to start a podcast, then hire people to do it. Okay. Now it's a business. Like now we have to manage and have SOPs and all this different business stuff. So that's a big thing that we do, where we source people. Like half of the last 3 months for me has literally been just talent. Like I had no idea how hard it is to find talent. People don't know. They think you're just going to get on Fiverr and you can get on Fiverr. And I've gotten lucky and grabbed a great editor quickly. Right. But that's also a big piece of this. If you're going to do the work, cool. Have fun when your wife says XYZ. Your girlfriend says XYZ, like when you just have to do things, right? Like when you just have to actually do it when it's in very inconvenient time, that's the struggles you're going to face then. And then if you're going to outsource, then have fun when your contractor isn't employed by you and really has no obligation to even do the work. So it's just like I'm not here to paint the picture of all the bad things, but I really do want to highlight the difficulties, because I'll tell you them now, right? But I'll put this in if I were to put it simply, and it's oversimplifying this whole thing, but 4 P's of podcasting: planning, preparation, production, promotion, right? If you want to make it simply, you can do the 4 P's. I think I made them up, I'm pretty sure. And so that's really it though. The planning stage is is all the strategy, right? So that gives you a decision-making framework for the rest of the show. The preparation is everything that partially what you do and partially what I do, which is your lighting and your cameras and your intros and your outros and all that. And then production is just making the thing and then editing the thing. And in your case, in this case, might a little bit less editing. Say you have a podcast like we made, 6 minutes scripted, takes half a day to just record the thing. So it depends. Production can vary all across the spectrum. And then promotion's the most important piece. Like if nobody can see it, if the example I always use is I could have a Ferrari dealership down the street and I can discount all the Ferraris to $5,000 each. But nobody's going to show up if I don't put it in the newspaper. I don't put it on Facebook and make a post about it. So you can have the best thing in the world, but if nobody sees it, then what's really the point? So, I really do, I have the same mindset as you, man. I'm really trying to simplify it, but also like there are some really big things that you got to tackle. And, as much as you can systematize it, it's right. Things are going to happen,
Well, and that Ferrari dealership example is a great one, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you're selling. It doesn't matter what service you're providing. You could be the best in the world. And if people don't know you're there, then like, how can they buy it? Right. So, yeah. That's a great lesson, and I think I'm going to use that as a pivot point. We mentioned, or you just mentioned, we've been a little negative so far. So let's switch it up, and we'll look at some of the positive aspects of podcasts, video podcasts specifically, because that's what we deal in more. So why podcasts? Like, what makes the medium special, do you think?
Well, what makes the medium special is definitely the intimacy, not the intimacy with the audience, but not the intimacy with the audience up front. It's the intimacy with the host and the guest first. And so that I kind of frame it like this. I have a friend who got his leg amputated at 16 years old. Okay. If I met him on the street, I wouldn't be asking him about it because I don't really know him that well. I don't know if that's a sensitive topic for him. I have him on the podcast. I'm able to set up a scenario where he can explain the entire thing. It's not weird. It's not awkward. And actually what we do is we capture the entire thing on audio and video. So then other people can go and listen to the story and learn from it and watch it. Right. So fundamentally, that's what podcasting does. I'm speaking from more of a conversational interview type of thing. And so, or style, and there's many different styles. And that's also another massive benefit to podcasting. But it's accessible everywhere. Podcasts are free. Like there's free. If a podcast is getting released on the major platforms, it's also on a ton of free platforms as well. If you have an Apple product, Apple Podcasts are free. I mean, I can name off all the other ones. So it's not like Netflix where you're behind a subscriber wall of $12 or $15. The content's extremely dynamic. So we can record this podcast. Then you can go and transcribe my words, quote me, and take my name and start getting SEO on your website with all of the things that I said. So you can literally use other people's expertise and they want you to do it. And so that's another aspect of it. And so there's so many benefits. And I'm really happy actually that we preface with the work, because when you do that work and then you get all the benefits, it's like, it's just amazing how it pays off. But those are just a couple examples. We can dive into video a little bit more specifically there. But, podcasting for me, I have never felt anything in terms of, I've never felt the same way getting off a 2-hour podcast with somebody than I've ever felt with people before. And that's just me personally. That's what I do, an in-person video podcast. Been doing it for a long time. And so that's why I do it personally. And I'll continue to do it for that reason, but there's also the myriad of other benefits.
Yeah, no. And that's a great point. And I think you hit on one of the big things I always am advocating when I'm talking podcasts, which is that just knowledge share, right? I always use the phrase that I kind of have always used in the past is the easiest way to create good content is to talk to somebody smarter than you and record it, right? Yep. And that's what we're doing right now. You've got a lot of knowledge that I don't have and that we can share with the audience. We record it, we'll cut it up and share bits and pieces after the fact. It's just for especially like the solopreneur or
Mhm.
smaller business, you get so much bang for your buck with this
Yeah.
format, I think.
If you were especially in that position, right? If you talk to somebody, it doesn't have to be me, it doesn't have to be Neil. If you just talk to somebody who understands the dynamics of video content and podcasting intimately, you can get a really solid game plan on how you're going to do this for your time and your budget, and that's how we decide, right? Like my my job is not podcast producer, founder, CEO, whatever that stuff's great. It's podcast decision making guy. That's my job is to help people decide if they should actually do it and then how they're going to do it. So if you want an easy way to decide, you can do the time budget analysis, right? You can go, this is how much time I have, this is how much budget I have, and then you can outsource the things that you don't like doing that take the most time. I just started doing this recently with my podcast. But like for practical, actionable things you can do, talk to somebody who knows what they're doing. Don't rely on Google and YouTube. If you are, go start emailing some of the people you're watching, get some custom advice, and you can do it on any budget and any time interval. I just made an email newsletter about this, which is, the 4-Hour Work Week. Tim Ferriss, loved the book, really got me started in business. I want, like, people are asking me, how much time is this going to take? How much time is this going to take? You can make the 4-hour podcast, not 4 hours a week, 4 hours a month. You can create it just depending on your time, your budget, your tools, your resources, right? So any way you want to do it, it's possible. It's just about it's about in the beginning, really determining that. And I would think speaking with somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. And to piggyback that a little, I think as you brought up, you start with that goal, work your way backward, because, the just determining I'm going to spend this much time on this podcast or have this monetary budget can be a tough place to start, right? You really want to see what your goals are and probably work your way back. So
agreed.
Excellent. So we know why podcasts can work for a lot of businesses. This is Video Strategy Month. So I wonder if you had just a couple of easy tips that people could take away for their own podcast or video podcast. What do you think some of those strategy tips might be?
Yeah, I'd say off the bat, really choosing this is a kind of a tough one to explain how to do, but focus on choosing the right moments from your podcast. And how you do that is you test them out, right? You don't post 5 clips and then go, let's see what worked. You post 100 clips and you take the top 3 and replicate them. What I see people doing, what I did with TikTok, is I brought my other knowledge. I built an audience on LinkedIn and go, I can do TikTok. Went to TikTok. My TikTok got 50 followers or whatever, right? It's because I was bringing my old stuff to the new stuff. And people will do that with anything. And like I said, I did it with myself. So I think just testing, you're not testing with 3 video clips, people. You test with 50 or 100. If you test with anything, you're gonna the bigger the pool, the better, right? Because then you know even more intimately what worked. So I spent the last 3 years posting video clips on just Instagram alone. I didn't even go to YouTube or TikTok yet. And that gave me a great indication on what works and why it works. So I'd say that one off the top, you got to do your testing. What does that mean? You got to make the content. You got to just make a ton of clips. I wish there was a trick to it. And there's a ton of apps and resources you can use to do that. So that's number one. You just got to do it. You just have to actually post the content. It doesn't have to be every day, but quantity is important here. And then on top of that, also probably looking into, once you start doing that, what are the other platforms that you can leverage video with? And the benefits of video, why you're doing this, is because there's platforms that allow you could get 100,000 followers in a day from one video. The fact that that's possible, that you can build an audience for life, the fact that that's possible is incredible. So the next portion of this, depending on how far we want to go, is what I've been doing, which is the vertical video, which is TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. And the power of those videos, I get 100,000 impressions every 90 days with an account with 500 followers. That means at least 100,000 people are just seeing what I'm doing. And from there, we're getting, thousands on the page, then hundreds to follow. And it segments down from there. But there's a massive opportunity with video right now. And I will say I have a cheat code, which is do an in-person podcast. It looks a lot better on TikTok and things like that. It's much harder to do with virtual. But I think, first of all, you're not posting enough video. So do more, make more clips and test. You probably can't guess which ones are going to do good because the audience is going to tell you. And then number two is like, there's video platforms that not that you're going to have a business overnight, but you could totally have a following overnight, with the right clip. So
I think that those are great points. The put in the reps, right? You got to do the reps to get where you're going to get. And that just comes to mind because I reread James Clear's Atomic Habits recently, right? Everybody's
great one.
Maybe not everybody's favorite book, but up there, I think, on a lot of lists. And putting in the reps, like you said, quantity. If you put out 100 videos, you are going to be a lot better at making videos. Let me get in frame here. You're going to be a lot better at making videos, and you're going to know what is resonating with your audience, or if you're resonating with the wrong audience or whatever, right? You learn so much by going through those reps. So
I think that's why it's important to at least learn the basics yourself, because then you do know. Like, I wasn't a video editor. I had edited videos before, but I wanted to learn it. So I committed to doing it for a few years so I can learn it. And now I'm at the point where I'm starting to outsource things, that I'm not as good at. But the videos were doing pretty well, like compared to my other content. So I leaned into it and I started, focused on just getting better. But yeah, I think Alex Hormozy says this. I heard this from him, which I really like. And many people have probably said it before him, but quality is good. Quantity is good. But quantity is better. So
I haven't heard that one. That I like that. Yeah, that works well. Well, let's see. Oh, we wanted to talk a little bit about vertical video, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that kind of before we got on live here. So what is your strategy with vertical video for your video podcasts, obviously? Yep.
Yeah. So, where this all started is with one video in particular that I always remember, which is a video of my podcast. I think I was using like this webcam. We didn't even have the nicer cameras yet. And I created a video. I basically took a moment of my podcast, put it in to, instead of wide, I just switched it to 1080 by 1920. I punched into me. Then I overlaid a video. So I was talking about John Mayer. John Mayer says there's a quote, there's a video of him from the Berklee College of Music from like 2007. He did like this whole talk. And he said that the audience is always right? The audience will always tell you if your stuff is good or not, right? And so I clipped that. I punched him into the video, and the quality of my video was terrible, but the video got 10,000 views and I had like 300 followers. And that was like really, that was really good for me. Like, I really had no idea that could happen. So from that moment, I go, okay, so I'm going to make these vertical videos. And then I started figuring out that the editing was extremely important. So I then found another podcaster who grew on TikTok 0 to 200,000 followers. He's probably got 500,000 now in like less than a year. And I'm not talking about just vertical. I'm talking about vertical video from podcasts, which is a specific thing and also pretty difficult to get traction. So my friend got all this traction because he was editing these videos like it was the trailer of a movie. And so another spark went off. I go, okay, now they've got to edit them in a specific way. So then that's what I begin to do. I started to learn editing. It was about the cuts. And number one, on these platforms, it was about the beginning of the video, right? The moment. And that's what everybody says. The first 3 seconds, the first 5 seconds. That's 100% true. And then it's about keeping retention throughout the 45 seconds. So I was spending, it's a little less time today, but I was spending an hour or two on a 45-second video, and they weren't just getting 5,000 and 10,000 views. They were going up and getting 40 and 50, and, they were climbing. And so my strategy, though, and I have to tell my guests this, by the way, if you want to do this, I have to tell them, hey, I'm sorry, but this video isn't to showcase you. This video is to get people to be interested to then watch your episode. So what that changed for my show is that I have to tell them, hey, you got to trust me. Like, you have to trust me. Like, this might not be your best moment, but you got to trust me that this is going to be the moment that are going to draw people in. Right. So they'll tell me, nah, this moment, whatever. Then they'll text me, hey, it's got 20,000 views, whatever. Like, I'm putting people's content on their Instagram account that they would never have those type of numbers. So once they see it, they go, oh, I get it. Right. But anyway, so that's my video strategy. I'm pulling a moment that a random person on the internet will hopefully want to watch. And that is my goal. So.
Yeah, I'm going to do one follow-up on that, and then as predicted, we burned through our half hour pretty quickly, so then I'll hit you with one more thing. But
no worries.
So is it just experience that allows you to pick that best clip? Because it sounds like it's not necessarily the most flattering clip of the person on the podcast or anything, right? It
could be, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah.
Is it maybe a funny moment? Is it a moment that they just seem really human? Like,
yeah. So if I can get more specific, I will say it is a conviction most of the time. So it's some kind of opinion. And that is probably not an opinion that everybody agrees with. It's probably like a 50-50 split opinion.
Sure.
And you're coming out of the gate with that. So one, for example, is my problem with America today is that's pretty polarizing sentence, right? A friend of mine said that. He didn't post the clip. He didn't want to post it. Cool. It got 20,000 views, whatever. It got us some followers. Great. And so that's just one example. My other friend he was speaking about a rapper, and he was telling them that the rapper had a pretty bad drug addiction, that they should have taken his record deal away from him because of that. Right. So that is like, these are strong opinions, and I have a ton of rappers and hip hop people on. So for the context, but that's mostly what it is. You want you kind of want that comment section to be going a little crazy, you know? So, but that's what I aim for. I'm not trying to make people look bad. I'm just trying to grab an opinion that, hey, you were on this podcast, you said it. If I'm on a podcast, whatever I said today, hold me to it, right? I said it. If I was wrong, I was wrong. But
well, and I think you're hitting on something that is just true in like personal branding and marketing in general, which is like, I think a lot of folks, right, will look at trying to qualify potential ideal clients or whatever, right, and saying the right things to be like, hey, I might be the right fit for you. But just as importantly, and this is a big thing that through a business group I'm associated with Donnie Bovine and the Success Champions Networking Group, they talk about this a lot. Disqualifying is just as important, right? And we actually touched on it prior to going live. If somebody, watches this podcast and doesn't like the way I talk or like the looks of me or whatever, and that's a big part of what I am selling as part of like my consulting and community services, that's fine. Like, cool. Disqualifying that person is just as important to getting to client interactions as anything else. So
tie it to podcasting too. And I won't go far on this, but say in a podcasting video content scenario, a guest approaches you, right? Hey, I'm this guest. I do this, this, and this. You want to know what you're not going to do, what guests you're not going to have on, what industries you're not going to cover. Why? Because it helps you make decisions faster. Ultimately, the highest level of everything is decision making, right? That's it's not the most work, it's not the hardest worker in the room. It's the best decision maker, right? So having the not to do list, having the what not to do, the who not to do, the who not to have on, it ties to content too.
Yeah, that I think everybody who has a podcast probably does. You'll have those like companies that try to match make guests and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And I always ask, I'm like, well, what have they done with video, right? Because you're not a fit here if we can't talk video. And it's
no, I'll go off if I start going on. I'll go off if I talk about these guys.
Yeah.
No disrespect.
So, all right. We won't go down that rabbit hole. Instead,
Play it
we'll
next time.
move on
Bookmark
to
it. Bookmark it.
yes, bookmark it. So next podcast, we'll just go on a full on rant with those groups, right?
Whatever we got to do, man.
All right. So I'm gonna ask the one question that kind of is the common thread throughout this podcast series. So it's called the Smarter Business Podcast. And that it's called the Smarter Business Podcast because we're talking about how to do things a little smarter in your business. So what's one thing that you've done for your business or a client's business that has made their business smarter?
Yeah, I would say I'll speak from my business because this is a recent thing, is just listening to the market and then going on and making the decision to do what the market's telling you. I'll just paint this picture. I was on a call with somebody and they were talking about their podcast. We don't have a ton of offers for people who are 50, 100, 150 episodes in. We're really focused on the launch, but I am like, well, I can probably help these people. So I brought up the topic of like an audit, like a podcast audit, like, oh yeah, we could probably audit your podcast. And we've sold one a week for the last 2 weeks. And this isn't even something that we offer. So
it is now.
Like it is now. And we just built it out. Like we just did 3 of them ad hoc. And now we built out like a system to do it. And it's really affordable. And it's like a light bulb thing where I go like, oh, I never would have thought that this would take off like this. Yeah. So all I did was just listen to one person and then I brought it up to another person and then I brought it up to another person and each of them just, oh yeah, I'll do it. Like, so that was one of the first things where I think a lot of times in our businesses, we're trying to invent stuff. It's probably 90% of the time, the market's just going to tell you what you have to do. So your ideas might be great. You might come out of the door with a great idea, but when it gets 3, 5, 7, 10 years in, you really want to keep your ear to the ground. So I'd say that's a big one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So often, and sometimes the signal is maybe not even one conversation, but like multiple people ask you about the same thing. And you're like, well, then it gets obvious, right? Maybe I should offer this. So I know how that goes. I've had a number of those moments within a few of the life cycles in my business. So I think that's an incredible tip for people to take out of this. And with that, I think because we have had our time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time who's listening, watching, doing the podcast thing here. Thank you very much, Ryan, for coming out and chatting with us. Do you want to let people know where it is best to find you on the internet?
Yeah, thanks. No, this is a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate you doing this and always love to do interviews and hop on and talk about podcasting, video. This is what I do, man. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Ryan R. Sullivan. So Ryan Sullivan would probably be tough to get me. And then that's really all I'll plug, like really the LinkedIn profile. And then, if you type in podcast principles, if you Google it or podcastprinciples.com, that's our business. But we release content on LinkedIn every single day, myself and my partner. We're building there. And, we're really just trying to help make podcasting as simple as possible for people. So definitely connect with me. Appreciate the content. And then through my profile, you can find everything else. My personal podcast that I've spoke about in this interview. I'm a rapper, music producer too on the side. That's a lot of fun. So I post about that too. So yeah, all in one spot and then you can go from there. So I really appreciate it, Neil. This is awesome, man.
Yeah, right on. And I should have put in our graphics Ryan R. Sullivan. I just did Ryan Sullivan.
Oh, it doesn't. I'm not like that. I don't care either way. You're good. They'll figure it out.
I didn't think about how common a name it is, and I use my middle initial on LinkedIn as well. So I should have been.
It makes us seem smarter than we are. That's why I do it.
Well, here's the other thing that it does. It's a bot detector. So everyone.
I love it. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, every one of those automated messages comes through. Hi, Neil K. Like, yeah, right. Yep. Okay.
All right, man. Cool. Cool. Right. You're busted.
Busted is right. All right. So with that, thank you again, Ryan. Thank you to all of you tuned in via live stream or listening to this as a podcast or watching us on YouTube. The Smarter Business Podcast is all about talking to business professionals about how you can use video within your business better. And with that, I'll say